Would everybody please rise and join me for the pledge to the national anthem? Okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Yep.
Short meeting tonight.
I hope so.
Okay, can everybody hear us? Can you hear us out there all right? Can you hear us out there all right, Alice? We had a communications issue last time we were here. That's good. All right. FOIA public notification. This meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. We have minutes to approve of May 5th. Can you? There's a delay there. Might want to turn that delay off.
The delay was there last time also.
Excuse me while we check our technical equipment here. Guy looks confused. Okay, it won't talk over me, will it? All right. Okay, let's try it again here. Approval of meeting minutes for May 5th. Are there any modifications, suggestions, additions? Hearing none with no objection, the minutes are approved. Anybody want to add anything to the agenda? Modify anything? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Moving forward. This is an opportunity for citizen comments on non-agenda items. Do we have a citizen comments to be made? All right, when you please step up to the podium, give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Great, 3 minutes. Kuda Ramsey with Allison Ramsey Architects.
Yes.
I was hoping to get this as an agenda item in the future for you guys to explore, but I'm bumping up against some ordinance issues with garages specifically over and over and over again. I've talked to staff about it a couple of times, and I'd like to figure out a good mechanism for getting some revisions done. We can't hit all the details in 3 minutes, obviously, but if there's some way of you guys getting to know me and staff bringing forth comments and working through some of those issues, it'd be greatly appreciated. It's just some rules that need to be revised. They're not very helpful. They're kind of hurtful in all cases. And that's really it. I don't know the proper mechanism. I know Rob well for probably 30 years now, or at least over 20. When he brings some of these issues back to you guys, I hope that there's a good way to kind of get these things pushed forward. And I'm happy to go into details, but obviously 3 minutes isn't going to cut it.
Okay, well, Rob is the right one to talk to about the process, and we'll go from there. So, thanks for coming forward.
Has anyone else brought any issues like this up?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other citizen comments on non-agenda items? I don't see anybody else in the audience. Okay, let's get to the action item for the evening. This is consideration of a text amendment to the Community Development Code, Division 510, Historic Preservation, Section 72120, Certificate of Appropriateness, Section 730, 3.80, Historic Designation, Section 7.4.50, Public Hearing Scheduling, and Section 7.5.40, Historic Preservation Review Board, HPRB. Kristen, are you presenting this evening?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, good afternoon. So The item before you is some text amendments that will be helping the county get the CLG status, which is something that is worth a National Park Service. This opens a door for eligibility to more historic grants. Currently, the language in the CDC does not meet the qualifications for a CLG. So I worked with the State Historic Preservation Office and then also Horry County, because I'm pretty sure they're the only county in the state that also has a CLG, which hopefully we will be getting soon. So I worked with them for all of these amendments. Also in here is a cemetery and burial site buffers that have been added, and those were also in coordination with the state and what they recommended that we do as well. So I guess with this one, we can just walk through it. If y'all have any further questions about the background, unless y'all just want to start. No?
No, go ahead.
Yes.
In the packet that you sent, now?
Pull it-
Now?
Get close.
Okay. Sorry.
Pull it closer to you.
It's not coming.
All right. Oh, there, I can hear it, yeah. In the packet that you sent us, you had a link in there to show other places in South Carolina that have the status. And I think City of Beaufort and Bluffton already had it. So I guess my question is why does the entire county need it?
Why does what?
Why does the entire county need to have this?
So this would be for unincorporated. So like whenever I go to apply for grants, like the planning department goes for grants for unincorporated historical sites, we would need it ourselves to be part of that list.
Okay.
And we are currently not, but the cities are.
Yeah. And how come the other states, or counties don't have that?
I guess they just haven't really tried to. I can't speak for why the other
Yeah.
counties haven't. All
I
I
know.
know is that Horry County has had it for a little while now. That's about it.
About it.
I don't know why the other counties.
Okay, well, I'm learning about this, so I'm trying to find out why we're doing it, why we need it. And
Yeah. So the main background was about a year ago or so, I was looking into grants, and there was one that would definitely have been perfect for something that that we could have probably implemented on St. Helena. But I was talking with the state, and they said that we couldn't apply for it because we were not a CLG. But this is like a reoccurring grant that we could apply for if we are CLG. So my hope is we get it, so that way we can, over the years, get more grant money through this program.
Okay,
And currently also, our historic ordinance is not very thorough. It kind of sets to where the county has purview over National Register sites, but we really shouldn't be doing that. So this is to create our own local designation as well, so that way we have a process to designate those and do work with historic sites, because right now we probably aren't doing it the correct way.
okay. Thank you.
So this only applies to unincorporated properties or districts?
Yes.
Historic. What if there's an overlap of a historic district that goes into a municipality?
I did put in the new language that, I'll find it somewhere, but I'm pretty sure I put in something about if there's a district that we would coordinate with that municipality to make sure that we are both agreeing on the boundary lines.
Well, I was kind of aware that you might be doing that. That leads me to the question of the review process to come up with these particular set of standards. Were these shared with anybody or anybody else have a chance to preview them, since these are going to be enacted by the process right now just by our county council? So has there been any review with other planners and other municipalities that these are coming forward?
These were reviewed with the state. They were also reviewed with Horry County. I had some meetings with them. And then the Beaufort County's Historic Board also reviewed them.
But not any other planners in other municipalities? Okay. So they're not familiar with the language specific to this particular proposal for a policy?
No.
Okay. Should they be?
I feel like to become a CLG, you kind of have to have certain things in your ordinance. So I would say that it's probably very similar. It's just a little bit different, I feel like, because we're a county. So the city has a lot better standards of even a historic district. Their way of going about getting a historic district is a lot different than how a county would, because usually a municipality only has one certain historic district, whereas a county would have multiple, maybe smaller ones.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, I have a question. Why do you think the county never had a CLG? Did they have one and it kind of fell into oblivion?
I don't believe it was ever, because right now it would not qualify for a CLG, and I don't think it would have qualified 20 years ago for a CLG, so I just think that it was
Because of this language that was absent? Okay.
Yes.
I have a quick question, and you may or may not know this. How many properties throughout unincorporated Beaufort County have you identified that could possibly be of historic nature and require grant monies?
We have, there's throughout the county that are already on National Register, which could also be a local, would probably be 50 to 100, but then there's also local ones. So we just in January finished the above ground historic survey for south of the Broad and St. Helena Island, and that one came up with around 20 that they recommended that we add to our local designation list.
Okay, thanks.
And just as a matter of process, I live in an old house, right? It's on the National Register. So a house like mine would automatically be on the county list? Do you draw
would be
your
something
lists
that-
from the National Register?
It would be something that I would bring forward as staff. It wouldn't automatically, so with you're talking about for a local designation, to be on the Beaufort County's purview?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
It's a little
so
unclear to
that,
me
it
what the
wouldn't just
process is.
automatically, that's what we're trying to get rid of, because right now, our ordinance just has, if anything's on National Register, it's automatically a local designation. Well, we kind of need to have an actual process in place, or there can be some legal issues. So yours would not automatically be on the list, but it would go through a process to where there would be I think it would go before the historic board, and then it would go through council. So that way it's kind of it's almost kind of like a rezoning in a way, but nothing's really changing. Do you know what I mean? It has this process of 3 readings and stuff.
I don't really understand that. My house has been listed on the register, I don't know, 1973 or
Yeah.
something. So you're telling me, and other property owners on St. Helena who have old houses that are on the register, that we have to reapply to the county?
No, you wouldn't have to. This would just be something that if it's on our above ground survey, if we have it listed, then that's something that I would look into to see if we need to add it to the local. As the homeowner, you wouldn't have to do anything unless it's, in the future and you want it to be added to the local inventory. But right now, it's something that I would, as staff, bring forth to the historic board, and then county would adopt it into the local.
And you'd write me an email? I really don't mean to be glib, but this is kind of an interesting question.
No, yeah, it's in here for notification that I would have to, for historic designation, publication and written notice would be required within 15 and 30 days of a public hearing.
It just seems redundant and unnecessary to me, I guess. I don't understand the point. If it's already on the National Register.
Because we do not, as a county, have purview over anything. So basically, right now, our historic board reviews and does the COA, Certificate of Appropriateness. But we can't do that for National Register items because we should not, as a municipality, have purview over that. I think it was something, there was a suit maybe like in California a couple years ago where that was determined that local governments need to have their own local designation and its own process in order to have purview over anything architectural and stuff like that.
We're now talking about a COA, but I mean just the existence of a house like mine. That has to be now brought before the Historic District Review Board at the county level?
If you were to go into the local inventory, that would be something that staff can initiate to add yours to that inventory.
And where do I find the local inventory? I didn't find a lot on the website when I looked it up today.
That's what we're trying to start.
Okay, great, thank you.
Go ahead.
Did you have?
I'm confused, but I don't think I'm the only one. Can the county come in, you'd never do this to my house, but just as an example, as the owner, if I have not approached the county about something being named an historical site, can the county come in and proclaim it's a historical site and file all the paperwork and take that out of my hands?
No, that would, no.
Okay, so it's not like it's a preemptive thing where if I want to modify my home, and it's not a historical site, it's a lot easier than if it was a historical site.
Yeah, this is just for like architectural review, and then it would also, I'm trying to figure out what you're asking.
So am I.
We're getting down to a lot of the details. As I understand, you're just trying to establish the county as an authority to move property on up to the state authorization, then the National Register. The process has not had a local designation to this point.
Yeah, the only local designation that we have right now in our ordinance is anything that is on the National Register. But that is not a complete process of how something should be looked at with this historic value. So right now, we're just trying to establish a local historic inventory and go from there.
Okay?
Can I go back one sec? You mentioned the word funding, but I don't think the National Register of Historic Places provides funding. Are you saying that the county might provide funding for these historic sites?
No, it's usually with like projects as far as like surveying. You can even go as far as maybe some cemetery work. So funding from them for the county to do certain projects
And that
for
means
preservation.
you or the planning staff would apply for that kind of funding?
Yes, ma'am. So I did want to just go through this. Let's start. So I had some comments sent to me by Mr. Henney, and I wanted to talk about those. So I did note that there was, for historical designation 7380, it's towards the end, that B6 and B7, they had references to 7340 when it should have been 7380. So I have noted that to be something that would have to be edited and changed.
So under 7380, under A, purpose, the purpose of this section is to provide guidelines for the review and approval of Beaufort County's historical designation of individual properties and districts. Going back to my earlier question, you mean I've got to do that again, or is this districts and properties that have never been proposed?
You wouldn't have to do it because your property is on National Register. That's something that staff would automatically put on a list as something that should probably be adopted into
So
our
it's just
local.
new, like new properties or new areas, new cemeteries.
This is anything that will be established as a historic designation.
How does a site become a historic register?
On the National Register, that is something that the property owner would do with the National Park Service.
You'd have to have a reason why you want that done, right?
Yeah, I don't really.
No, I'm serious.
Know the
I mean,
full process
my
for the
house was
National
built
Register.
in 1993. I don't see any historical significance to it, but hey, maybe I want it on there. Why would I want it on there? That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
So one of the things that we have in our ordinance, I'm just giving it a real life example, is we have, if there is a structure that is more than 50 years old, like a commercial building in a rural area that is non-conforming, we have a provision in there that they could adaptively reuse the building using its original intent. So if it was an old store, then it could be refurbished into a store without having to go through the rezoning process. And so we have, I'm not going to point out exactly which property because we've spoken with a property owner who has a historic store. It's not on our above ground survey, it's not under a national register, but it very much meets your kind of vernacular country store, and so that would be an incentive for them to apply for the local historic designation because then they could use that provision for adaptive reuse. So there's more than just grants, so.
Good. Okay. I'm trying to learn about this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just kind of going on what Rob was saying, the old Seacoast meatpacking place, I think that's actually in the city of Beaufort, as an example, because that is considered a historic building. Suppose someone wanted to come in and they wanted to keep the facade as it was to maintain its historical presence. Could someone theoretically go in there and say, well, I want to turn this into an art gallery? Where would I get the funds from? Is that along the lines of what you're talking about?
No, so this would not be a way for someone to get a grant from the county. This is a way for a county to get grant money from the federal government, is what the CLG is.
Okay.
Whenever I bring up grants, it's not for individuals in the county. This is to help the county with its historic preservation.
Okay. All right.
So the grant money goes to the county budget. Okay.
Kristen, can you give an example for the commission as to how you may use the federal grant money, for example? Is it to do additional historic surveys? Is it to,
Yeah, so like I said, we just finished that surveying for above ground historic resources, but there's also, for example, St. Helena Island has a lot of burial sites that aren't fully demarcated and they are on other people's properties and that. So we're trying to also right now look at updating that cemetery survey. So this would be something that would allow us to become a CLG, so we could apply for grants to continue that effort with cemeteries.
Kristen, was that original survey done in, what, 1999, the cemetery survey
Yes,
of
ma'am.
St. Helena? And it's kind of just stayed on the shelf since then?
It's been given to the state, I believe, for archaeological reasons. I mean, I have it, I use it, but it hasn't been updated since '99.
Thank you.
Did you have something you wanted to go through? You mentioned going through it further.
Y'all just want to start on page 1 and we'll just go through what all really has been done?
But it's the commission's preference. You want to walk through this?
I'll just do summaries.
Yes,
I'm not going to
yes,
do word
to-
for word.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm sort of
Yeah.
in the middle of it, but
Okay.
I'd certainly like to. Thank you.
So the first one, I had to set up a purpose statement. So a lot of this language came from Horry County because they are our precedent for the state, for a county municipality to have the CLG. And then I added some definitions. I did note that the word preservation is out of order, so I will be moving that. So that way it'll be after ordinary maintenance. So these are definitions that I worked with legal and we decided that should be added because they aren't in the CDC currently. And then we go to 51030. This just sets up that there should be a designation and inventory designated by council. And then there's some wordsmithing for 51050 for certificate of appropriateness. And then you go on a couple pages. 7540, this one added that there's, for the Historic Preservation Review Board, that one of their duties is to review and make recommendations for the designating of historic resources and districts. Because before their only power and duty was their certificate of appropriateness, but now that we're adding this local inventory, they will have the power to review those. And then we go on to certificate of appropriateness. This was also just some changes in wordings. That way, so like for A, in purpose, it says all National Register listed. So we got rid of that, so that way we say that it's for Beaufort County's historic listings. And then, so the COA standards, we added the secretary standards for rehabilitation, so that way we have something to back this off of, and including the intent. Also added demolition and relocation. Relocation wasn't really in here beforehand, and there was something that was relocated on St. Helena, so decided that was definitely something that needed to be added. Oh, cemetery's in there. Sorry. There's so much. I'm so sorry, guys, for overwhelming y'all. Where's cemeteries? I'll go through and then go back to cemeteries. Next is historical designation. This is all brand new. So this is the whole process and procedures for creating this local designation and adding to it. So there's the criteria for historic designations, and then on the other page is the criteria for historical districts. And then the next pages are just the scheduling and notice for public hearings. Public hearings are not required for a certificate of appropriateness. They would be required for a historic designation of a property. And that's that. I do want to go back. to, where is it? Rob, can I see yours? I think this one was the old,
Oh, okay.
before I added the cemetery buffers. Okay. So on 51090, this is like the second or third or fourth page. There's section cemetery buffers. I want to know if y'all had any questions about these. So we're thinking a 20-foot buffer is required for those burial sites that are clearly demarcated with headstones. And then a 50-foot buffer would be required for those where the true extent is not visible and or has not been surveyed both above ground and with ground penetrating radar. So this would help development to occur away from these historic burial sites.
Under B2 there, who is responsible for doing that LiDAR or above-ground survey? Is it the county? Is it the church that owns the cemetery?
It would be whoever's trying to develop on that property. They would be,
Built near the property?
anyone that's trying to develop within that buffer, they would be required to do that ground penetrating radar work.
I was wondering why you called it 51090, access to cemeteries on private property, struck out private cemeteries, because to my knowledge, and you know, Councilman Glover might know more about this than I do, that the cemeteries on St. Helena are really overseen and overlooked by
Yes.
different church congregations.
That was just for the label of that section. It's because the cemetery section has access to cemeteries under it, and then there's a section B, which is cemetery buffers. So I didn't get rid of anything that already existed. I just had to change the wording so that way I could add subsections under it.
And is there a penalty or a provision in the development agreement that the developer has to prove a reason why he or she is impeding, you know, or entering the buffer zone? Is there an appeal process?
I would assume that would be ZBOA, maybe. To
Are you talking about when there's a violation?
Right,
impede into the buffer.
Neighbors say, gee, this is impeding our access to the cemetery of our forebears. What is the county's role in a situation like that?
So we've had this come up before, and we then required the property owner to complete some ground penetrating radar work before they got their permit to build.
And then you sign off on it if you feel they've been in compliance?
Yes.
And how many of those have there been, to your knowledge? 5? 100?
Any of those?
You're speaking specifically about when there was a known cemetery near a house and there was question about the extent of that cemetery.
Sure, and I'm speaking beginning in 1980, a long time ago.
I don't have a long history of that, but recently there's an example in the Chichesi area where there was a known older cemetery on that site, and we worked very closely with the state to determine what they felt was reasonable as far as the distance from the markers on that site and whether a ground penetrating radar. They recommended the home builder to conduct that ground penetrating radar survey. That was the only time I had ever been involved in something like that. Another case, and this is different, but it's also showing an example of a house that is close to encroaching on the cemetery. This was one where the site for the cemetery was surveyed on the plat, but when the developer or whoever, it was a modular home, they brought the home in and put it right on the edge of the cemetery, and that created, so these are two different examples of where having that buffer requirement, one where it was surveyed, so we would say, I think it's at 20 feet, 25 feet to put the house and not to encroach in that area. In the case of where there was not clearly defined, then it's 50 feet from the nearest. But we don't have anything like that currently in the code, so this is,
Oh,
definitely.
no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do think that there are some cemeteries that are not that well demarcated.
Yeah,
I mean-
that's what I've been learning.
Just what
And I think
know
as
from
you're
old
aware,
maps. Yep.
that's why we're really pushing for trying to get more surveying done, to,
The
especially
county
in areas
will
where
foot that bill.
we're working through that.
Two questions. How confident are you that these changes will be accepted as part of the application for the CLG? Now that we've kind of hashed this language out, do you feel pretty good that when you submit this, they're going to say, yes, that meets our requirements, or?
Yeah, and I looked through also the application just to make sure that we hit everything. And there's also, there's like an example one that I have it over there, that the state has provided. It doesn't go into as much detail as an actual historic ordinance would go into, but it hit all those necessary points. So I'm pretty confident, and I also worked with the state to make sure that this is good to go. So if it doesn't, then I'm going to blame the state and not myself. I'm just kidding.
And my second question was just in terms of process now, would you anticipate, if this was adopted, I guess, then the Historic Preservation Review Board would first look at the National Register sites as the first step, and then?
Yes, sir. I think I'm going to maybe try to go for maybe like a July meeting with them, and have a list of those starter ones, all those like National Register sites, so that way we can go through those, and then throughout the coming months, we'll go through the ones that were in that updated survey and look at ones that would probably be good for local inventory designation. But yeah, the National Register ones are the ones that will be the first, because those are going to be the easiest ones to just zip through, because they've already kind of had that process done where they had to follow those standards.
Thank you.
Kristen, in section 7380, B2, you refer to the application can be initiated by county council, the director. Who's the director?
That would be Rob, or
Rob?
or his appointee.
Well, maybe you should say it that way, because the director,
So director is defined in the CDC already.
oh, it is.
Yes, sir. So it's at
Okay.
the end in the definitions.
All right. And the Historical Preservation Review Board, is that a county organization, or is it outside the county?
That's with the county.
It is, okay.
Yeah, it appears that you've introduced a further process in the review of historic designations, including a public hearing and an appeal process, which means new stakeholders are going to be made visible to this process. And you can tell by the questions that we have here, trying to understand the nuances and the definitions and what's eligible and what isn't eligible is a little bit new and perhaps confusing to many stakeholder groups, diverse stakeholder groups, whether they be the public, or they be the construction industry, or they be renovators, or whoever. I know it might be premature to think about this at this point, but is there intent to promote this this new process in general to the public? There's going to be some educational process before construction people, or before?
Yeah, for sure. I also just think that those working in constructions are already in the Low Country know what a historic designation is. So if you work in Bluffton, if you work in Charleston, if you work in Beaufort, it's kind of already a thing that's established throughout the Low Country. We're kind of a little behind because we are a county, so it's a little different. But as far as like an information session, that's definitely something that, yeah, once this passes, I think that the Historic Board will definitely be interested in doing.
I'd like to follow up on Ed's question, very much mine. There's nothing on the county website that I can find, like FAQs or historic designation. It says what the Historic District Review Board is, the county board, but it's kind of lacking. And I'll give you a direct example. One of my neighbors, whose house was built in 1892, knocked at my door. I've never met the man, except he knocked at my door 3 times in 3 days this last week, and said, am I in compliance? Am I not? What do I do? Where do I go? And so I copied this for him and he said, well, I'll go down to the county tomorrow morning. I said, well, actually get your ducks in a row. Like, what is it you're going to ask the county planning department? He is completely at sea. I don't think he's trying to do anything egregious, but he simply does not know what to do.
Okay.
I think he's well-meaning. So like Ed, I would, promote the heck out
Yeah.
of this in terms of education.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't think realtors are really stepping up to the table on this one. We've had realtors in here before when it was climate change issues and flooding issues. I pushed the person who sold the house and said, remind me who your realtor is, because the guy hasn't gotten the message. Again, I think he wants to do the right thing, and there are many people who want to do the right thing. I get that, but they are absolutely at sea. So I'd push that, if I may, as hard as you can, either on the website or through informational meetings or, a brochure that you can.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to
put
go
out
through
there.
all this process and also updating inventory of our surveys just to not do anything with it. So I definitely plan to go out in the public. And
Maybe county council,
Yeah.
it would be an agenda item for one of their off-site meetings.
Yeah.
Do any of our municipalities have a similar process within their municipality for such designated properties? I mean, they already have, do they have their local designation that goes up to the state already, or are we just catching up with the municipalities?
We're trying to catch up with the municipalities. They have very similar processes as this.
Oh, that's good to know. I did not know that. Other questions? Okay, I guess public comments. Rob, would you like to say anything else? No?
I would just say, we're replacing a system where we had an ordinance that referenced, I'm just summarizing what Kristen said. We have an ordinance that says our requirements apply to National Register sites and those in the above-ground survey. And we're learning that that's not good enough. So we were doing something the same way for the last 25 years, but this is now, I guess, we're stepping up the game so that we're doing it in the proper way that is more defensible as well. So,
Well, I think it's probably...
I appreciate that a
It's
lot.
very appropriate. I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot of properties that have been discussed as being burial grounds or sacred grounds or archaeological dig grounds out in the St. Helena area, and I can imagine you might get a litany of requests and applications.
yeah.
Other questions? No?
I have a question, a bit off topic.
Off topic? Yes, go ahead.
It's me, after all. I wasn't able to talk last meeting for 4 hours. Now I can. I'm making up for lost time. What I'd like to know is to the degree to which your findings are available to the public. So Exhibit A would be obvious, Pine Island. I understand there's been an archaeological survey done. I don't know if there were cemeteries out there. I think that's just a big black hole of not knowing. So I was just wondering, how do you intend, not the process that Ed and I brought up to you, but I mean what's been done and what is ongoing for, let us say, controversial projects in the county?
That one gets a little hard with whenever it comes to archaeological resources.
Well, there might be a cemetery there. I simply don't know.
Yeah, and if there is, that may be part of the cemetery, the update to the cemetery resources. I'm not exactly sure. But right now, it is available to get the 1999 cemetery survey. They also have it, the Beaufort, I think the Historic Foundation has one that you can use. But yeah, it's not very clear. We do have also right now on the website where you can go and look at all of the resources from the 1998, 99 above ground. It's just, yeah, archaeological is a little different because that's whenever the state comes in and there's a lot of issues with if it can be disclosed or not.
Sure, I've heard that.
Okay.
But it's your intention to have this made more public or to put it on the county website in some way?
For this, like, did you want to speak?
Well, for the cemetery upgrades, for example, like I have a map, I don't
Yeah.
know, produced in the 1950s maybe, USGS map, that has, I don't know, if not all, most of the cemeteries on St. Helena. So I kind of know where they are, and I've been there, and some are accessible, some are not. Some have no boundary around them, as I mentioned, no demarcation. Others do. If you ride down Seaside Road with an older member of the community, that member will say, oh, that's Big House, or, that's Cherry Hill, or, whatever. That's Macturius. So there are, in institutional and living history, there's knowledge of those cemeteries.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is whether the county intends to systematically go through, alphabetically, doesn't matter to me. I mean, you guys have a job to do, but, how you're going to get those inventoried in a way that is better than what happened in 1999.
Yeah. I do think that with this, also, we would add a GIS layer.
Sure.
So I
That
think
makes
that could
sense.
be something that is explored. We also want to make sure that we are maybe keeping some part of the cemetery survey too is creating boundaries with it. So we want to make sure that this is done correctly whenever we do, if we were to share it with the public for specific ones. Hopefully by the end of it, people will be able to get that.
With church elders, you mean, or community members?
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else, Cecily?
Nope, that's me.
Thank you. All right, let's bring the discussion up to DS. For any comments, anybody would like to talk about this amongst ourselves? Questions?
I'll just say one thing. I mean, obviously, it looks like you've put a lot of work into this, and somewhere during the course of Rob's directives to you of things to do, you found this to be a hurdle to get over. In other words, trying to get this grant money. And it's apparent that the work you've put into this will hopefully allow you to overcome those hurdles going forward to be much easier. I'd like to think, too, in the positive sense that hopefully this will help keep Beaufort County, and not turn into Horry County, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
But I do appreciate your work. My only fear would be is I hope that the amount of work that you put in and the size of the staff that we have at the county isn't going to increase the workload, because it's great to protect the old, but there's new coming every day, and I know that's got to be almost insurmountable. I don't know how you guys keep up with it sometimes, but I think it's a good thing that we're trying to do with this, and I appreciate y'all's work on that.
I too, I appreciate the looking into this and coming up with something that's meaningful to the county, a process that the county can be proud of, and can get potentially additional funding to support, and make it extremely more visible to all the stakeholder groups who may have an interest but don't know what to do. So I'm hoping that this will be accompanied, as I said earlier, by a promotional campaign of some sort, whether it be by industry or whether it be by physical group in community areas. I don't know. Other comments that anybody would like to offer? If not, can I hear a motion for the staff's report?
Sure, I'll make a motion. Oh,
Did
excuse
you,
me.
did you have a comment, sir?
Just like last month, when you do a text map amendment or a zoning map amendment, you have to go through the criteria, and it's the same criteria that Rob laid out in his staff report. But I prepared this format that Rob prepared this when we talked about it months and months ago, that you can go through to list the criteria. I've highlighted in yellow the criteria that match up with the staff report that Rob prepared for you. You can agree or disagree, but when you make your motion to approve or disapprove, you need to list the criteria. So whoever's going to make the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Let me ask a question. If we want to make it to accept the staff report, is there a reason still to go through all of the different standards in the staff report, as long as we accept?
It just makes it easier to defend. First of all, it tells council exactly what you consider is laid out. And then if it's ever appealed or challenged at court, we can show the history as far as you went through each criteria, and that's what you considered, so we can defend it better. And we've learned that lesson the hard way over the last few years.
Okay, thank you. Well, somebody needs to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
You want
Oh, sure, I just thought you might want to see that before I make the motion.
sorry, I know it's in it.
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission support the staff decision, and I think I will go into that in a moment, on a text amendments to the Community Development Code, Division 5.10, Section 7.2.120, Section 7.3.80, Section 7.450, including both items in that section, public hearing, schedule, and notice and process regarding the Historic Preservation Review Board. The case number is CDPA-00052-2025. And in supporting the staff's recommendation, I move that we grant the request for the text amendment for the following reasons, 1 through 7 inclusive.
Second.
That's satisfactory?
Is that satisfactory? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
That's
They
what
were
she
met,
said.
that the staff met, in the staff
Yes.
recommendation,
Yes,
those
that's
1
what she
through
said.
7 were met.
All right.
And shouldn't we reference that? Excuse me.
You prefer that we read all 7 of the standards?
Excuse me, one quick question before. Kristen, didn't you say at the beginning that there was one amendment that you have to make to this document? And do we have to reference that in what we are in the motion?
She's going to call it a scrivener's error and reorganize one of the definitions, and one other section that she'll make before it goes to council committee, and the council committee will receive that in the order that she wants it to be in.
So we don't have to include that in the...
She's,
So do you
let her
want me to
clean it
read
up
them
for council at that point, and she'll explain the difference as far as where she organized it and what the change is, but it won't change anything substantive, as I understand it, right?
out? Right.
So it's exactly what you have, changing one of the definitions to put it in the proper alphabetical order. And what was the other change? You talked about another amendment.
Alphabetical order, I just put it in the order that it was presented to us.
It was, that one wasn't in
That's out of order. What was the other change?
alphabetical. Uh, 7380B 6 and 7.
You can just reorganize it?
I'm changing the 40s to 80s.
Okay, then you need to change section 7.3.80, paragraph B7 to read 7.380C
80C
as
and 7380D.
Yes.
Same thing with 6 on
Same,
the last.
same thing with 6, the 7.340D to 7.3.80D. And that would qualify as a scrivener's error in that regard, as far as just having the wrong section by one number. She'll fix that and clean that up, so you don't have to worry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will read the 7 standards for inclusion in the record.
Happy to, sure.
Go ahead.
Shall I put the standard out from the staff? Is consistent with and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and the purpose of the development code. That's number 1. Yes, the comprehensive plan recommends to preserve and protect the county's historic and cultural landscape per strategy C2. Is not in conflict with any provision of the development code or the code of ordinances. No, it is not in conflict. 3, addresses a demonstrated community need. Yes, it gives the county more funding opportunities for historical surveying and protections. 4, is required by changed conditions. Yes, it is required. As the county continues to grow, the importance of preserving historic character does as well. I think these are extremely well reasoned. 5, is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zones in this development code, or would improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the county. Yes, it is consistent. These amendments would improve compatibility with the creation of local historic resources and districts that require review from the Historic Preservation Review Board in order to receive a certificate of appropriateness. Very important. Would result in a logical and orderly development pattern. Yes, see proceeding number 5. 7, would not result in adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, and the natural functioning of the environment. Yes, it would not result in adverse impacts. Any development on the site would be required to adhere to the natural resources protection, tree protection, wetland protection, and stormwater standards in the Community Development Code and the Stormwater BMP Manual. That's it. So we have 7 out of 9. I think all of those, 7 explanations and rationales from the county staff are extremely good and extremely accurate.
Do you have something else? Oh, yes, I know that. I was waiting for you to give us the okay to go forward. All right. Do I have a second on that motion? Second. Second from Pete? All right. All those in favor of the recommendation, raise your hand. Unanimous. Recommendation stands approved. All right. I think that's the only business we had. I don't have any particular business for chairman's report. Any comments? Anything you wish to add? Hearing nothing, I declare this meeting adjourned.